If there was one universal truth about space stations, it was this. They were absolutely magnificent at turning routine maintenance into existential crises. Before we begin, YouTube shows me that 93% of you haven't subscribed yet. Subscribing is free, it really supports our community, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Also, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. The Galactic Research Station Unity Hub exemplified this principle with the kind of dedication that would make bureaucrats weep with pride. Unity Hub stretched across the void like a metallic starfish having an identity crisis. Each of its 12 arms housed different research divisions, living quarters, and, because someone clearly had a sense of humor, a recreational deck that nobody ever used. The station rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity that worked about as well as you'd expect from a compromise between 43 different species' physiological needs. Emily wiped grease from her hands with a rag that had seen better decades. Down in maintenance level 15, surrounded by the constant hum of life support systems and the occasional spark from temperamental wiring, she'd found something resembling peace. Well, as peaceful as you could get when half the station's inhabitants considered your species either a delightful curiosity or a potential snack. The comm system crackled to life above her head, interrupting what had been a perfectly serviceable morning of fixing things that shouldn't have broken in the first place. "Attention, all personnel," came the melodious, crystalline voice of Brewmoth, the station administrator whose body was composed entirely of living mineral formations. "We will be conducting a routine security drill in approximately 15 minutes. All non-essential personnel should remain in designated safe zones during this exercise." Emily snorted. Routine security drill. Right, because nothing involving the word routine ever went according to plan on Unity Hub. She'd been on the station for 8 months now, and she'd learned that routine was administrator speak for "we're about to do something spectacularly stupid, but we're calling it planned." The maintenance bay's secondary door hissed open, revealing Dr. Kelvash. The insectoid researcher stood nearly 3 meters tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh work lights. His compound eyes, all 6 of them, focused on Emily with the kind of intensity that suggested he was either fascinated or planning her dissection. "Emily," he clicked, his voice carrying the metallic undertone common to his species. "You are aware of the security protocols, yes?" "Sure am, Doc." Emily tossed her wrench into the toolbox, with perhaps more force than necessary. "Stay put. Don't panic when the alarms start shrieking. And try not to get eaten by whatever they're releasing this time." Dr. Kelvash's mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. "Your species' casual approach to mortal peril continues to baffle our xenopsychologists." "We're a baffling bunch," Emily agreed cheerfully. "What are they unleashing on us this time? Please tell me it's not those acid-spitting slug things again. I'm still scrubbing that gunk out of the ventilation systems." "Vexcon predator cubs," Dr. Kelvash replied, and Emily could swear she heard a note of concern in his metallic voice. "6 juveniles, approximately 2 months old?" Emily blinked. "Cubs, as in baby versions of those things that can tear through reinforced steel plating?" "Precisely. And this is routine how, exactly?" Dr. Kelvash's antennae twitched, the insectoid equivalent of a shrug. "Station Administrator Brewmoth believes it will provide valuable data on emergency response protocols." "Ah, yes, valuable data." Emily began packing up her tools with considerably more urgency. Nothing says scientific advancement like releasing baby death machines into the halls and seeing who survives. The comm system crackled again, this time with the gravelly voice of Nalwix, the reptilian security chief. All personnel, secure your locations. Drill commencing in 10 minutes. Maintenance staff in levels 12 through 16. Be advised that emergency lockdown protocols will engage automatically. Emily paused, wrench halfway to the toolbox. Lockdown protocols? Standard procedure, Dr. Kelvash assured her, though his compound eyes were scanning the room as if looking for escape routes. The cubs are trained to return to their handlers when the drill concludes. Trained. Right. Emily resumed packing, but faster now, because baby predators are famous for their obedience and impulse control. The lights flickered, then shifted to the amber warning pattern that meant the station's AI was about to do something that would probably result in paperwork and therapy sessions for everyone involved. A low, harmonic tone echoed through the corridors, the kind of sound that made evolutionary hindbrain regions sit up and pay attention. I should return to my laboratory, Dr. Kelvash said, backing toward the door with surprising speed for something his size. The lockdown will seal these levels in approximately... The blast doors slammed shut, with a finality that suggested they'd been waiting all day for this moment. Emily found herself staring at several tons of reinforced metal where the exit used to be. Now, Dr. Kelevash's muffled voice came from the other side. Emily looked around the maintenance bay, taking inventory. Tool storage, spare parts, emergency rations that expired sometime during the previous administration, and a ventilation grate that was definitely not large enough for human-sized escape attempts. Well, she said to nobody in particular, this is going exactly as well as expected. The station's PA system chimed with the cheerful tone reserved for announcements that were about to ruin everyone's day. Drill participants have been released in Sectors 9 through 14. All personnel are advised to remain calm and follow standard protocol. Emily sat down on her toolbox and pulled out her maintenance tablet, scrolling through the station's schematics. Maintenance Hall 12 was connected to the primary access corridor, the same corridor that, according to her readings, now contained 6 very active heat signatures moving with the kind of purposeful energy that suggested hunting instincts. The ventilation system carried sound with remarkable clarity, and Emily could hear them now, the soft padding of paws, the occasional chirp or growl of communication, and the distinct scraping sound of claws on metal flooring. The cubs were methodical, systematic. They were searching. Emily's tablet beeped softly, showing the creature's progress through the corridor system. They moved in a loose formation, splitting up to cover more ground, then regrouping at intersections. It was efficient, intelligent, and absolutely nothing like the chaotic rampage she'd been expecting. The sounds grew closer. Emily could hear them right outside the blast door now, sniffing and scratching at the metal. One of them made a low, questioning sound, almost like a whine. Then the backup power kicked in, and the blast door's emergency release activated. Because of course it did. Because in the grand tradition of space station maintenance, the one system that absolutely needed to work during an emergency was the one system guaranteed to fail at the worst possible moment. The blast door ground open with the slow, dramatic timing of a horror movie reveal. Emily gripped her wrench and tried to remember if anything in the maintenance manual covered appropriate responses to predator encounters. 6 pairs of luminous eyes stared back at her from the corridor. The Vexcon cubs were nothing like she'd expected. Oh, they were clearly predators. Lean, muscular forms covered in iridescent fur that shifted color in the artificial light. Retractable claws that left scratches in the metal flooring, and teeth designed for things Emily preferred not to think about. But they were also small. Well, small by Vexcon standards. Each cub was roughly the size of a large dog, with oversized paws that suggested they'd grow into something considerably more impressive. Their ears were too big for their heads, their eyes too wide, and their movements had the slightly uncoordinated quality of juveniles still figuring out how their bodies worked. Emily and the cubs regarded each other in mutual silence for what felt like several geological epochs. Then the largest of the cubs tilted its head to one side and made a sound that was part chirp, part purr, and entirely unexpected. "Well," Emily said carefully, "hello there." The cub's ears perked up in unison, and Emily realized she'd just made a terrible mistake. In every training manual, wildlife documentary, and cautionary tale she'd ever encountered, the first rule of predator encounters was simple: don't engage. But apparently, nobody had given the cubs the same manual, because instead of attacking, they did something far more disturbing. They sat down, all six of them, in a neat semicircle, watching her with the kind of focused attention usually reserved for dinner preparation. Emily's grip on her wrench relaxed slightly. This was not going according to any script she knew. In the grand catalogue of things that definitely shouldn't happen during routine security drills, having 6 alien predator cubs politely arrange themselves in a semicircle and stare at you with what could only be described as hopeful expectation ranked somewhere near the top. Emily had prepared herself for many scenarios during her time on Unity Hub. Equipment failures, atmospheric breaches, food poisoning from the cafeteria's mystery protein nights. Being the apparent object of fascination for a pack of baby death machines hadn't made the list. The largest cub, Emily mentally dubbed him Big Guy, tilted his head further to the left, as if trying to get a better angle on this strange new creature. His fur shimmered from deep blue to silvery green in the maintenance bay's fluorescent lighting, and his oversized ears twitched at every small sound Emily made. "Okay," Emily said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is new." The cubs' collective response was immediate and thoroughly unsettling. They all made the same soft chirping sound, almost in harmony. It wasn't threatening; if anything, it sounded pleased. But Emily's human brain was having difficulty processing the disconnect between designed by evolution to kill things and apparently auditioning for the galaxy's cutest boy band. Through the maintenance bay's security feeds, which Emily had forgotten were broadcasting to the entire station, roughly 200 alien researchers were having collective nervous breakdowns. In the central command center, 3 levels up, Nalwick stared at the display screens with the expression of someone watching their career prospects evaporate in real time. Her reptilian features, normally composed in the kind of stoic calm that came from dealing with bureaucrats and researchers on a daily basis, were currently arranged in what humans might generously call barely contained panic. "This is," she began, then stopped, her forked tongue flicking out to taste the air in the nervous gesture common to her species. "This is not the expected outcome." Brumoth's crystalline form chimed softly, their species equivalent of clearing their throat. Indeed, the probability calculations suggested a 96% chance of standard predator-prey response patterns. "Standard predator-prey patterns," Nalwix repeated, watching as one of the cubs scooted closer to Emily and made what sounded suspiciously like a contented sigh. "Not whatever this is." Dr. Kelvash arrived at the command center with the kind of hurried urgency that suggested he'd run the entire way. His compound eyes immediately locked onto the security feeds, and his mandibles clicked in rapid succession, the insectoid equivalent of muttering. "Fascinating," he chittered. "Absolutely fascinating. The cubs are displaying none of the expected hunting behaviors. No stalking postures, no pack coordination for attack patterns, no territorial aggression indicators. "Then what are they doing?" Nalwix demanded. Dr. Kelvash studied the screens more carefully. Emily had moved slightly, reaching for her tablet, and all 6 cubs had shifted position to maintain visual contact with her. When she'd crouched down to get a better view of her diagnostics, they'd lowered themselves correspondingly, maintaining the same relative eye level. "They're mirroring," he said finally. "Behavioral synchronization, typically seen in social bonding scenarios." Social bonding. Brumoth's harmonic voice carried a note that might have been disbelief. "With a human. With Emily specifically," Dr. Kelvash corrected. "Note how they've arranged themselves. It's not a hunting formation. It's a social circle. They're including her in their pack structure." Back in Maintenance Hall 12, Emily was reaching similar conclusions, though with considerably less scientific terminology and significantly more personal investment in the outcome. "You guys are not acting like the apex predators I was warned about," she told the cubs conversationally. "This is either really good news, or you're the most patient hunters in the galaxy." Big Guy's ears perked up at the sound of her voice, and he made a soft trilling sound that his companions immediately echoed. The smallest of the cubs, a runt with particularly fluffy fur and mismatched ear sizes, actually took a step closer, then seemed to think better of it and settled back into a sitting position. Emily had spent most of her childhood on her family's farm back on Earth, and she recognized that particular combination of curiosity and restraint. It was the same body language she'd seen in young animals who wanted to approach but weren't sure if they were allowed. "Are you asking permission?" she asked incredulously. The response was immediate. 6 small heads tilted in unison, and the collective chirping sound took on a distinctly questioning tone. Emily looked around the maintenance bay, taking in her options. She could stay where she was, maintaining the standoff until the drill ended, and hopefully someone came to collect the cubs. She could try to scare them away, though given that they were baby versions of creatures that could dismantle starship hulls, her success seemed unlikely. Or, "This is probably the stupidest thing I've ever done," she muttered, then slowly extended her hand, palm up, in the universal gesture of peaceful approach. The cubs' reaction was electric. Ears shot forward, tails began a cautious wagging motion, and the littlest one made a sound that was pure excitement. But none of them moved immediately. They looked to Big Guy, clearly waiting for some kind of leadership decision. Big Guy studied Emily's outstretched hand with the gravity of a diplomat negotiating interstellar treaties. He sniffed the air, tilted his head to consider various angles, and finally took one careful step forward. His nose, cold, wet, and surprisingly gentle, touched Emily's palm. The moment of contact seemed to flip some kind of switch in the cub's collective consciousness. The careful restraint evaporated, replaced by what could only be described as enthusiastic approval. They surged forward, not attacking, but clustering around Emily, with the sort of excited energy usually reserved for long-awaited reunions. Okay, easy there," Emily laughed, finding herself surrounded by warm, purring bodies and investigating noses. Personal space is still a thing, even for interdimensional killing machines. The cubs seemed to find her voice endlessly fascinating. Every word she spoke prompted a chorus of responses, trills and chirps, and what sounded like attempts at mimicry. The littlest one had discovered that Emily's maintenance jumpsuit had pockets and was thoroughly investigating each one with the dedication of a customs inspector. In the command center, Dr. Kelvash was frantically taking notes, while his colleagues watched the impossible scene unfold. "The pheromone readings are off the charts," reported Zulkrix, the station's gaseous psychologist, whose form rippled with colors that indicated intense scientific excitement. "The cubs are producing bonding chemicals at rates consistent with imprinting behaviors." "Imprinting?" Nalwix repeated slowly. "They think she's their mother?" "Not precisely." Zulkrix's form shifted to thoughtful amber. "The neurochemical patterns suggest something more complex. Pack acceptance, social bonding, but also—" He paused, his gaseous form cycling through several colors. "Protection instincts. They're treating her as something to be guarded." As if summoned by his words, the scene in the maintenance bay demonstrated exactly what he meant. Emily had moved toward her toolbox to retrieve something, and all 6 cubs had immediately repositioned themselves. They weren't crowding her. Instead, they'd formed a loose perimeter, facing outward, watching the corridors and access points with alert attention. "They're protecting her," Dr. Kelvash observed with wonder. "From what, I cannot say, but the behavior is unmistakable." Emily, blissfully unaware that she'd apparently been adopted by 6 alien bodyguards, was trying to figure out her next move. The cubs showed no signs of wanting to leave, and honestly, she wasn't sure she wanted them to. For the first time since arriving at Unity Hub, she felt welcomed. These creatures, who by all accounts should have seen her as either threat or prey, had instead decided she was pack. "So," she said to her new companions, "anyone know how to explain this to the nice security chief who's probably having a nervous breakdown right about now?" The response was a chorus of sounds that Emily chose to interpret as, "Leave it to us." Somehow, that didn't make her feel more confident about the situation. Outside the maintenance bay, emergency lights continued their amber rotation, and somewhere in the distance, alarms were still shrieking their warnings about dangerous creatures loose in the corridors. If only they knew the dangerous creatures had apparently decided to become her fan club instead. If there was one thing the scientific community loved more than a controlled experiment, it was an uncontrolled experiment that produced impossible results. Within minutes of the cubs' unprecedented display of affection, Unity Hub had transformed from a research station into what could generously be called organized chaos, and more accurately described as academic panic with a side of bureaucratic meltdown. Dr. Keflin arrived at the command center with the kind of fluid grace that came from having evolved in aquatic environments. Her amphibious features glistened under the harsh lights, and the gill slits along her neck fluttered with the rapid breathing that indicated extreme scientific excitement, mixed with professional bewilderment. "Someone please tell me," she said, without preamble, "that we have comprehensive biological readings on what's happening down there. Because from what I can see on these feeds, we're witnessing either the most remarkable case of interspecies bonding in recorded history, or the most elaborate predatory deception since the Tlaxian mindworms learned to mimic birthday parties." Zulkrix's gaseous form swirled with patterns of deep blue contemplation. "The neurochemical data is unprecedented. The cub's brain activity shows markers consistent with deep familial bonding, protective instincts, and social hierarchy acceptance. But Emily's biometric readings are equally fascinating." "How so?" Nalwix asked, though her attention remained fixed on the security feeds, where Emily was apparently explaining the finer points of plasma torch maintenance to 6 wrapped predator cubs. "Her cortisol levels should be through the ceiling," Dr. Keflin explained, manipulating the holographic displays to show Emily's biological readings. Fight or flight response, adrenaline spike, all the standard markers of life-threatening encounters. Instead, her readings show calm. Not just calm. She's more relaxed than she's been since arriving on the station. Dr. Kelvash's compound eyes focused on the data streams. Fascinating. It's as if both species are experiencing some form of mutual beneficial response to proximity. Mutual beneficial response, Brumoth chimed, their crystalline form resonating with harmonic skepticism. That's quite the scientific euphemism, for nobody has any idea what's happening. Down in Maintenance Hall 12, Emily was discovering that baby alien predators had opinions about equipment maintenance. Big Guy had taken a particular interest in her plasma torch, sniffing it thoroughly before making a sound that Emily chose to interpret as disapproval. "Yeah, I know it needs calibration," she told him conversationally, "but try explaining proper maintenance schedules to station administration. They think preventive maintenance is what happens after things explode." The littlest cub, Emily had started thinking of her as Patches due to the irregular fur patterns along her flanks, had discovered that certain tools made interesting noises when tapped. She was currently conducting what appeared to be a percussion symphony using Emily's wrench collection. "Easy there, Patches. Those are precision instruments, not musical equipment." Patches looked up with an expression that clearly conveyed, "But they make such interesting sounds," and continued her impromptu concert. Emily was reaching for her tablet to check the station's status when she noticed something odd. The maintenance robots that normally required constant supervision were working with unusual efficiency. The automated systems seemed to be running smoother, responding faster to commands, operating with a precision that typically required direct oversight. "Huh," she muttered, pulling up the diagnostic readings. "That's weird." The cubs immediately clustered around her tablet, drawn by the soft glow of the display. But as they approached, something remarkable happened. The readings improved. Error rates dropped, processing speeds increased, and system efficiency jumped by almost 20%. Emily blinked at the numbers, then looked at the cubs, then back at the tablet. "No way," she whispered. She moved away from the cubs, carrying the tablet to the far side of the maintenance bay. The readings immediately returned to their normal, mediocre levels. When she approached the cubs again, the improvements reappeared. "Okay," she said slowly. "That's definitely not in any of the training manuals." In the command center, Dr. Keflin was watching the same phenomena through the station's monitoring systems. "Are you seeing this?" she asked, highlighting the relevant data streams. Every automated system within a 50-meter radius of Emily and the cubs is operating at peak efficiency. "Coincidence?" Nalwick suggested hopefully. "The odds against coincidence are approximately 43,000 to 1, Brumoth calculated instantly. Whatever is causing the behavioral anomalies is also affecting our technology." Dr. Kelvash was already accessing Emily's personnel files. "Perhaps we should examine her background more thoroughly. Earth humans have been known for their unusual relationships with various species, but this level of interspecies compatibility suggests something more than simple behavioral adaptation." Emily's file scrolled across the holographic display. Born in rural Montana, raised on a working farm, degree in mechanical engineering, previous experience in agricultural equipment, maintenance, animal husbandry, veterinary assistance. "Animal husbandry," Dr. Keflin read aloud. "She has extensive experience working with Earth creatures." "But these aren't Earth creatures," Nalwick pointed out. "The biological differences should make any Earth-based experience irrelevant." "Unless," Zulkrix interjected, his form cycling through colors that indicated deep analysis, "the compatibility isn't based on biological similarity, but on something more fundamental." Back in the maintenance bay, Emily was having her own moment of realization. She'd sat down on her toolbox and the cubs had immediately arranged themselves in a protective circle around her. But it wasn't just the cubs that seemed more settled. She felt different too. The constant low-level stress that had been her companion since arriving at Unity Hub was gone, replaced by a sense of rightness, as if some missing piece had clicked into place. "You guys are special, aren't you?" she asked quietly. Big Guy responded with a soft trill that somehow conveyed agreement, pride, and affection all at once. Emily's mind drifted back to her childhood on the farm. She'd always had a way with animals, not just the obvious ones like dogs and cats, but the difficult ones too. Injured wildlife, aggressive livestock, even the farm's notoriously temperamental geese had eventually warmed up to her. Her grandmother had always said she had the touch, that mysterious quality that some people possessed that made animals trust them instinctively. But these weren't Earth animals. These were alien predators from a species that had evolved on a completely different world, under different conditions, with different biological imperatives. There should be no reason for them to respond to whatever qualities had made her good with Earth creatures, unless those qualities were more universal than anyone had realized. The maintenance bay's secondary systems chimed softly, indicating that the emergency lockdown would be lifted soon. Emily realized she was running out of time to figure out what was happening before the cubs were collected and returned to their handlers. "We need to run some tests," she told her companions, "and I have a feeling the research staff is going to have some very interesting questions." The cubs seemed to understand that change was coming. Their relaxed postures became more alert, and they moved closer to Emily, forming an even tighter protective formation. "Don't worry," she said, reaching out to scratch patches behind her oversized ears. "I'm not going anywhere, but I think we're about to become very popular with the science department." From the command center, Dr. Keflin was already making plans. "We need comprehensive biological scans, behavioral analysis, and environmental monitoring. This could represent a fundamental breakthrough in interspecies relations." Or, Nalwicks added grimly, a complete rewrite of our safety protocols. But before the lockdown could fully disengage, something unexpected happened in the hydroponics bay 3 levels up. Dr. Vachetel, the station's botanical specialist, was conducting routine plant health assessments when her scanner began producing readings that made her question either her equipment or her sanity. The Alteran moss samples, which had been struggling to adapt to the station's artificial environment for months, were suddenly thriving. Growth rates had increased by 300%. Cellular regeneration was off the charts, and the bioluminescent patterns were more vibrant than she'd ever recorded. "Impossible," she muttered, recalibrating her instruments for the 3rd time. The readings remained consistent. What made it truly baffling was the timing. The improvements had begun exactly when the security drill started, and they seemed to be intensifying by the minute. Dr. Vashtel pulled up the station's environmental data, looking for any changes in atmospheric composition, lighting, or temperature that might explain the phenomenon. She found nothing. In the command center, Dr. Keflin was correlating data streams when the botanical readings caught her attention. "Nalwicks, are you seeing the hydroponics reports?" The reptilian security chief's tongue flicked out nervously. "Plant growth rates don't typically concern security operations." "They do when they coincide with impossible predator behavior and unexplained technological improvements," Dr. Keflin replied, her gill slits fluttering with excitement. "Whatever is happening with Emily and those cubs, it's affecting the entire station." Zulkrix's gaseous form shifted to deep purple, the color of profound realization. "The range is expanding. The initial effects were localized to Emily's immediate vicinity, but now we're seeing improvements throughout multiple levels." Dr. Kelvash was accessing comparative data from other research stations. I'm not finding any precedent for this type of environmental enhancement. The biological and technological improvements appear to be cascading outward from Emily's position. Cascading how? Brumoth asked, though their harmonic voice suggested they weren't sure they wanted to know the answer. Like ripples in a pond, Dr. Keflin explained, manipulating the holographic displays to show the spreading effects. Emily is the center point, and positive changes are radiating outward through the station's systems. Life support efficiency is up 18%. Computer processing speeds have improved across all networks. Even the food synthesizers in the cafeteria are producing better results. Nalwix stared at the data in disbelief. You're telling me that one human and 6 predator cubs have somehow optimized our entire station? That appears to be exactly what I'm telling you, Dr. Keflin confirmed. Meanwhile, in Maintenance Hall 12, Emily was experiencing her own revelations. She'd decided to test her growing suspicions and had pulled out her personal scanner, a piece of Earth technology that she'd brought from home and modified for station use. The readings it produced when aimed at the cubs made her sit down hard on her toolbox. Okay, she said slowly, staring at the display. That explains a few things. The cubs were generating some kind of energy field, not electromagnetic, not thermal, but something that her scanner could detect as a subtle harmonizing frequency. It was almost like a tuning fork for biological and technological systems, helping everything around them operate at optimal efficiency. But the truly remarkable thing was that she was generating the same frequency. We're resonating, she whispered, watching the scanner readings fluctuate in perfect synchronization between herself and the cubs. We're all producing the same, whatever this is. Big Guy seemed to understand her amazement. He approached slowly and placed one large paw on her knee, his luminous eyes fixed on hers with an intelligence that went far beyond simple animal instinct. Emily reached out and touched his head gently, feeling the soft vibration of the purring sound he made. Through her scanner, she watched as their combined frequency strengthened, creating harmonic patterns that were beautiful in their complexity. This is why you came to me, she realized. Not because I'm human, but because I'm like you. We're the same species? Type? What do you even call something like this? The other cubs gathered closer, and Emily could feel the resonance growing stronger. Through the maintenance bay's sensors, she knew the effects were spreading throughout the station. Plants were growing, machines were running smoother, and somewhere, confused scientists were trying to understand what they were witnessing. Dr. Keflin's voice came through the comm system, carefully professional but tinged with excitement. Emily, this is Dr. Keflin. Are you receiving? Emily reached for her comm unit, noting how the static that usually plagued communications in the lower levels had completely disappeared. I'm here, Doc. I'm guessing you've noticed some irregularities? That's one way to put it. Emily, we need to conduct some tests. What you and the cubs are doing, it's unlike anything we've ever recorded. The applications could be, well, revolutionary doesn't begin to cover it. Emily looked around at her 6 companions, who were watching her with alert attention. I think they understand more than we give them credit for, Doc. And honestly, I'm not sure I understand it myself yet. We'd like to bring you and the cubs to the main laboratory for observation. Nothing invasive, just basic scans and behavioral analysis. Before Emily could respond, Big Guy made a sound that was clearly negative. Not aggressive, but definitely a no. The other cubs echoed the sentiment, and Emily found herself smiling. I don't think they're interested in being lab subjects, Doc. but maybe we can work something out. These guys seem to have opinions about how things should be done." The emergency lockdown disengaged with a soft chime, and the blast. Doors began their slow retraction. Emily stood up, brushing dust from her jumpsuit, while the cubs arranged themselves in formation around her. Not protective now, but purposeful. They had somewhere to be. "All right, team," Emily said, shouldering her toolkit. "Let's go show the nice scientists what we can do." Whatever happened next, she had the distinct feeling that her quiet maintenance job was about to become significantly more complicated. But looking at her unusual companions, she realized she wouldn't have it any other way. The main laboratory of Unity Hub had never seen anything quite like the procession that entered it that morning. Emily walked in first, toolkit slung over her shoulder, followed by 6 predator cubs in perfect formation, trailed by approximately half the station's scientific staff, trying very hard to look professional while gawking at the impossible sight. Dr. Keflin had prepared the lab with every scanning device available, creating what looked like the galaxy's most expensive medical examination room. But, as Emily and the cubs settled into the center of the space, something remarkable happened. Every instrument began producing readings that were not just optimal, but perfect. "Extraordinary," Dr. Kelvash chittered, his compound eyes focused on displays that showed energy patterns unlike anything in the scientific literature. "The harmonic frequency is strengthening. It's as if they're turning our equipment into extensions of themselves." Zulkrix's gaseous form swirled with colors indicating intense analysis. "Emily, I need to ask you something that may sound unusual. Have you ever noticed that mechanical devices work better when you're around?" Emily considered the question while Patches investigated a particularly interesting piece of scanning equipment. "Well, yeah, actually. Back home, I was the one they called when the tractors wouldn't start or the irrigation systems went haywire. I just figured I was good with machines." "And animals?" Dr. Keflin asked, adjusting her scanners to accommodate readings that shouldn't have been possible. "Always had a way with them. My grandmother used to say I could gentle a wild horse just by talking to it." Emily paused, watching as Big Guy positioned himself protectively near the lab's main computer terminal, which was now running at efficiency levels that bordered on the miraculous. "But I never connected the two things." Dr. Kelvash's mandibles clicked in excitement. "Because there was no reason to connect them on Earth. Your planet's technology and biology developed separately. But here, in this environment, with these particular creatures, we're seeing the connection," Emily finished, understanding dawning in her voice. "The cubs aren't just responding to me because I'm good with animals. They're responding because I'm like them." The revelation hit the assembled scientists like a physical force. Brumoth's crystalline form chimed with harmonic patterns that suggested profound recalibration of worldview, while Nalwix's tongue flicked rapidly as she processed the implications. "Impossible," Nalwix said, though her tone suggested she was trying to convince herself rather than anyone else. "Humans evolved on Earth, completely separate from Vexcon development. There's no evolutionary connection." "Evolution," Emily said thoughtfully, reaching down to scratch behind Patches's ears. "But what if it's not about evolution? What if it's about something else entirely?" Dr. Keflin was studying her scanner readings with the intensity of someone witnessing the rewriting of universal law. "Emily, the frequency you're generating, it's not biological in origin. It's something deeper, something that exists at the intersection of consciousness and matter." "A harmony frequency," Zulkrix added, his form now cycling through every color in his species' emotional spectrum. something that naturally optimizes the relationship between living beings and their environment. Emily looked around the lab, taking in the faces of researchers who were watching her as if she'd just demonstrated magic. In a way, she supposed she had. So you're saying that some humans, naturally produce this frequency? We're saying, Dr. Kelvash replied carefully, that you're not just any human, Emily. You're something new. Or perhaps something very old that we're only now beginning to understand. The cubs seemed to sense the importance of the moment. They moved closer to Emily, not crowding but creating a living mandala around her, their combined presence amplifying the harmonizing effect until every system in the laboratory was operating at levels that would have been impossible an hour earlier. The implications are staggering, Dr. Keflin whispered. If humans like Emily exist, if they can create these kinds of environmental harmonies, galactic game changer. Nalwix completed, her professional skepticism finally cracking under the weight of the evidence. Emily, do you understand what this means? You're not just compatible with alien species. You're a bridge between biological and technological systems. Emily sat down on a lab stool, and the cubs immediately adjusted their formation to accommodate her new position. I understand that my quiet maintenance job just became a lot less quiet. The first human-animal relations specialist in galactic history, Brumoth chimed, their harmonic voice carrying notes of what might have been amusement. Though I suspect your job description will require some creative writing. What about them? Emily asked, indicating the cubs. They can't just go back to being drill subjects after this. Dr. Kelvash's antennae twitched, the insectoid equivalent of a smile. I believe the cubs have made their preferences quite clear. They've chosen their pack leader. Big Guy chose that moment to demonstrate exactly what Dr. Kelvash meant. He approached Emily and gently placed his head against her shoulder, making the soft, trilling sound that had become familiar. The other cubs immediately echoed the gesture, creating a chorus of contentment that seemed to resonate through the laboratory's very walls. Research partners, Emily said, testing the words. I can work with that. Over the following weeks, Unity Hub transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. Emily's official title became Interspecies Harmony Specialist, which sounded impressive enough to justify the budget increases while being vague enough to cover whatever impossible thing she and the cubs did next. The changes weren't limited to Emily and her unusual team. Other station personnel began reporting similar phenomena, though on a smaller scale. Engineer Vexmore, who had initially dismissed the human oddity as statistical anomaly, found that his plasma conduits ran 20% more efficiently when Emily walked through his sections during her rounds. The cafeteria staff discovered that meals prepared during Emily's lunch breaks somehow tasted better, leading to the peculiar scheduling notation of Harmony Hour cooking in their duty rosters. Most remarkably, other species began requesting transfers to Unity Hub. Word had spread through academic networks about the human effect, drawing researchers who wanted to study the phenomenon firsthand. But what they found wasn't just Emily's unique abilities. It was proof that harmony frequencies could be learned, cultivated, and shared. Dr. Kelvash published preliminary findings suggesting that consciousness itself might be more malleable than previously understood. The Emily phenomenon, as it came to be known in scientific circles, indicated that awareness, intention, and environment could combine in ways that fundamentally altered reality at the quantum level. We're not just studying interspecies relations anymore, Dr. Keflin explained during one of their weekly progress meetings. We're studying the nature of consciousness as a force that shapes the physical universe. The cubs, meanwhile, had become minor celebrities. Visiting researchers would arrive expecting to study predatory behavior and instead find themselves attending what could only be described as interspecies philosophy seminars, with Emily translating between the Cubs' complex vocalizations and standard galactic languages. The Cubs, now officially designated as her research team rather than test subjects, settled into station life with the adaptability that came from finding their proper place in the universe. Big Guy appointed himself Chief of Mechanical Oversight, developing an uncanny ability to detect equipment problems before they became failures. Patches discovered a talent for hydroponics, somehow convincing the most stubborn plants to thrive under her attention. The other 4 Cubs, Emily had named them Spark, Whisper, Thunder, and Scout, based on their distinct personalities, found their own specialties throughout the station. Unity Hub's efficiency ratings climbed to levels that attracted attention from research councils across the galaxy. But the most remarkable change was in Emily herself. The constant stress that had defined her early months on the station was gone, replaced by a sense of purpose that felt as natural as breathing. She'd found her place in the galaxy, and it turned out to be something nobody had imagined possible. "You realize," Dr. Keflin said one morning, as she watched Emily conduct what appeared to be a technical briefing for 6 attentive predator cubs, "that Earth authorities are going to want to study this phenomenon." Emily looked up from her tablet, where she was showing Spark the schematics for the new air recycling system. "Let me guess. They want to know why their maintenance engineer suddenly has 6 alien bodyguards and a job title that sounds like science fiction?" "Something like that." Emily grinned, reaching over to scratch Thunder behind his ears. "Well, they're welcome to visit, but they'll have to get past my security team first." The Cubs' collective purring suggested they were perfectly fine with that arrangement. In the end, the routine security drill that was supposed to test emergency response protocols instead revealed something far more important: that the universe was stranger, more connected, and infinitely more hopeful than anyone had dared imagine. And sometimes, the most profound discoveries came not from careful planning or rigorous methodology, but from 6 predator cubs who decided that the maintenance engineers smelled like home,